Hey, welcome to another one. What's going one to one thing? It's actually in the water cooler live. Paul's just joining right as I started. That's great, great timing. Oh, he's got his sleeves covered up. How are you doing, Paul?
Hey, Steve.
Good to
Can you
see.
hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Right,
Cool.
right. Just went live. It's always this. I love the fact that this never gets old. That when you are about to go live, that the butterflies kick in. The I don't get overly anxious, but I definitely have that sort of oh, I'm going live. So in some ways it doesn't stop me, which I think is the key thing. You feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like I remember when I first started speaking, like my mentor would tell me because I would get so nervous, and it was always because I was always kind of like the odd one out. Like when I started speaking, a lot of the people were very kind of like religious, so it was almost kind of like when they would speak, they would kind of talk at you versus
yeah,
with you type of thing. And for me, like I've never really been like the loud person, and I feel like there's a lot of power in like the silence and the quiet. So
mm,
it's like it kind of like I feel like when it comes to speaking, a lot of people are conditioned like the louder you are, that the more that your message is kind of heard. But I actually think that it's the opposite.
yeah,
Like when you're able to deliver your message, but like do it in a way that's not like going back to that like inviting and versus like insisting. Because I feel like a lot of times, people are insisting that you see things their way or to like do this or do that, when
yeah,
really it's just like I almost kind of just look at speaking as kind of like an echo chamber, sort of like you're talking to yourself type of thing. At least that's the way that I always kind of looked at it when I would go back and like when I used to rewatch like all my podcast interviews if I did an
mm,
event that was like recorded, and all of my friends would be like, oh, you're a maniac, like why would you want to do that? And I was just like, well, number one, like I'm for me this was kind of like practice, right? Like I want to
mhm,
go back and see like what can I do to improve. But I think more than anything, like I go and look back at those conversations, and it kind of tells me like where I was in that point in time. And it it taught me a lot about like when I'm speaking. I think the reason why it kind of connected and hit home for so many people is that like I I wasn't really talking to other people. It was more of like talking to myself type of thing,
mm,
and just like sharing that whole journey out with the universe. That's what my mentor said. She's like, I used to like always thank her and be so amazed with all the people that she would share with us and the lessons and collaborations and all the type of things. And she would always say like, "Oh, that wasn't for you. That was for me. I just decided to
yeah,
kind of like share it." And I think that was probably one of the most powerful lessons that I learned, is that it's just like letting the universe in on your journey type of thing.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah.
That's I just put up an image of a book. I'm more than halfway through reading. It's called Quiet by Susan Cain. And what you mentioned there about the expectation of when you're presenting to be sort of the loudest to make impact. And Susan Cain's book is really a sort of a nod to the power of introversion, the
Mm.
introverts. And I say introversion rather than introverts because you're not just labeled as one or the other.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So,
everybody's like both. It just depends on like who you're around and
mhm,
your environment. And I mean, going back to like a conversation that you and I've had before, like I didn't realize that the language that people use is like a big reason that keeps them stuck. Oh my goodness, Kevin, good to see you. It's been a while.
Kevin,
I've met
Kevin is
Kevin
a
before.
pattern interrupter. That's the power of this man. I'm blown away. That's just right. Yes. Oh my gosh, Kevin.
Yeah, no, so funny story. Gratitude's been like probably like one of the most transformational things. Well, I've actually had a coffee chat, I think a couple of times with Kevin, and we talked about gratitude a few years back. So it's good to see him on.
Yes, this is fantastic. Kevin, welcome. I,
Welcome. I'm trying to figure out where the audio is also playing that I need to mute because I'm hearing it.
Oh, you're
Oh,
in
it's
X.
probably another
In,
window. Like if
yeah,
you
in
open
link.
it up on
Yeah,
LinkedIn, you just have to mute it or close it.
yeah,
One of the two.
because it'll be delayed as well. So, oh my goodness, this is great. Great to see you. A- And it's been a while. It's I don't know, I guess it's the traditional time. Can you hear me okay now? You hear us okay?
I had 2 instances of restream going. I don't know
Oh,
how I did that. Sorry.
okay.
Sorry
No,
to interrupt.
no, like I said, you're a welcome interruption. Actually, you just changed Paul's trajectory on his discussion because you are eternally
Oh,
the
hello,
gratitude
Paul.
guy, and we're grateful for you.
Oh, it's been too long since I've seen either of you. But
Yes.
this morning, Steve, I knew I just had to join today. So I'm sorry. Let's dive in.
No, that's fine. This is the water cooler. We're just sitting by this virtual water. There we go. Sitting by this virtual water cooler, and whatever comes up, whatever's on our hearts, this is the place for it. It's always positive. It's always enlightening, and
Hey, Paul.
Hey, Kevin. Good to see you. Long time no see. But I know we have a lot of mutual connections and friends because I always see I'm either tagged in something with you or whatever it is. So it's good to see you.
yes,
Good to see you.
yeah, it's great. Yeah, Kevin always brings a smile to my face and a
Oh,
glow
man.
to my heart. So I appreciate you being here. We were just kind of bouncing around some things. I put that the image in the corner there is from a down here. It's from a book that I'm reading right now, and um,
Mm.
I'm really resonating with it because it speaks to the quiet voice. It speaks
Mm.
to the 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 profundity of of quiet, as
Mm.
opposed to a society where we always feel we have to one up the volume or one up the animation. I work with kids, and it's interesting that um, even in the school environment, primary school environment, um, there is a there is a I guess a mindset around if a child is quiet,
Mm.
then we have to do something. You know, we have to kind of address that. We want some sort of um, expectation of their input or their animation. And
Quiet people make us uncomfortable.
yes, why is that? That's a, let's go on. Why does I've got a take on that, but I'll leave that open. Why do you? That's a great observation, and it's true. I believe it's true. Why do you think that is?
Okay, so one of the things that prompted me is like, gosh, I got to be with Steve today is I saw Alexandra's post this morning on this topic. And the three of us had this wonderful connecting here, I don't know, 2
Mm,
years ago, something like
wow.
that. Um, and she was talking about, in so many meetings, the loud people get the attention.
Mm,
And um, and you know what? Oh, okay. Look, you know what I started to say, you know what loud people are thinking. They may not be thinking, but you know what comes out of their mouth, right? Whether they're thinking or not, they're just babbling.
mm,
And the quiet people, the people that sit there quietly, it makes some people uncomfortable because you're wondering, what are they thinking?
hmm
Why aren't they joining in like everybody else? Why aren't they part of the fray and the frenzy?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just makes us uncomfortable.
Mm,
You know, and as I read Alexandra's post, I was thinking, that's me, right? I mean, I remember so many corporate settings that I was one of those quiet people because it's just like taking time to process this and let it all soak in.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Paul, what's your take?
I think it's because they're unpredictable. Like I remember when AI and Chat GPT came a thing, like I was talking with one of my friends and I just came up with this weird saying about how Chat GPT couldn't like duplicate me if it tried. And I think it's like for a lot of people, it's easy to read right? But like when people are quiet
Mm,
and they're very like calm, especially when a lot of people are used to like movement, it's hard to kind of gauge a lot of the nonverbal communication because like people are quiet and they're listening and they're observing. I also think too it's that a lot of times like when people are quiet it's usually because they're like listening or observing, and it's like they can kind of see everything. I don't know if that makes
mm,
sense, but like
yeah.
when I used to like go in rooms and stuff, I would usually always like sit towards the back and I would kind of just observe and I would scan and I could kind of tell like, you know, who you can almost kind of like predict and read the room on like, okay, this person, you know, probably this way and that. And I think that's what it is that it's hard to get a sense of like being able to read people, and people are just afraid of things that they don't like, you know, understand.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I think it is.
Yeah, I've got a verse I just want to share here. I'll show this on this. It talks about Proverbs. The intents of a man's heart are deep waters, but a man of understanding draws them out.
Mm,
And I think for me, I think what makes quiet people, what makes people being quiet uncomfortable is that it requires them, it requires work on them to draw out
mm,
what is inside a quiet person. And
Well,
if it's so easy, if it's easier just to kind of listen to take
mm,
on what someone noisy is putting out, like you said, Kevin, if they're babbling, you hear that and you don't, there's no work on your part to draw it out. But if you're in a meeting and someone is particularly quiet, or in a classroom and someone is particularly quiet, it requires work on your side to draw that out of them. And it's usually good work to do. That's the thing.
yeah.
It's good work to do.
So, Stephen, I'm thinking of this both as a leader and as a lot of work I do as a facilitator.
Mm,
Right, when you're brought into a session, and a lot of the work is of a leader or a facilitator to make sure all voices are
are heard.
heard.
Yeah.
Right, so one of the things I often say in these type sessions or strategic planning session is we want to make sure every voice is heard. And I'll use in the states, let's use the um, um, the TSA motto, if you see something, say something,
Mm,
right? If you see you may be the only person in the room that sees what you see, but what you see about this issue is so vitally important.
mm,
And we need to make it safe, and we need to make space for those voices, right? So sometimes it's if you know the people well, right? A leader would know people well, and they
yeah.
know who is quiet, and they may just say, "Hey, Paul, you've been quiet about this, but I know you have thoughts on this topic. Would you share what you're thinking with us? We need to hear it," right?
Mm,
So that's what a gifted leader would do. And I think of a book I read years ago, and I had a podcast conversation with the author. His name escapes me at the moment, but it was Leaders Speak Last,
yes. Hmm.
right? Because he realized if he talked first, either everybody else just did their suck up to, yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was thinking, and brown nosing,
Hmm.
or it takes the oxygen out of the room, and it makes it unsafe
Yeah.
for somebody to share something that's a dissenting view.
Yeah.
But we need those views.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so powerful. And we just got to. It was interesting just going through this book. I haven't finished it yet. And I watched a TED talk with Susan Cain as well, which was really insightful. And just celebrating that side of our nature, and also it ties into she kind of tied it into our ability to be sensitive. Sometimes you have to be still and quiet to
Yeah.
sense things. And this is not a knock on people that are loud and bodacious, and But it's all qualities that
Mm.
make up all of us, and being aware of that.
Two thoughts. One, when you're talking about Susan Cain, she wrote a later book that she actually says is the book she really wanted to write.
Ah,
And it's classic. It's bittersweet.
mm, I'll get that one too.
And it talks about how much of life is bittersweet. It's both. And she'd had uh, these thoughts and this curiosity around bittersweet from her college days
Mm,
when she loved classical music, and so much of classical music has that sad overtone. My wife, she'll just, I can't believe that the soundtrack to Schindler's List is one of your favorite soundtracks, right? And it's so dark, and
yeah,
but man, there's something about
yeah.
that draws us in. And then one more, Paul said something when you were talking about AI and your comment about AI. I saw a post. I don't always catch them, but I caught one early this morning um, from the other Steve in the UK, uh, Stephen Bartlett, and
Mm,
in his post he was talking about AI, but he had this great line. The question you should be asking yourself is, what part of what you're building is irreplaceably human?
mm,
And Paul, I know I mean, those two words, right?
mm,
Irreplaceably human.
yeah,
There's nothing, it can't duplicate who you are,
mm,
because there are things you do. There's perspectives you have that are irreplaceable. Anyway, I just love that phrase,
yeah.
irreplaceably human. And what Paul said a few moments ago just triggered that again, right? That irreplaceably human.
Yeah, yeah, we've got to, and that's why I like this space, man. I mean, it's hard work sometimes. Waking up at it's 4:30 my time, 11:30 Eastern, I guess, and it's like, making this a rock in my week in terms of just showing up. And um, sure, technology and automation can help smooth the edges, and obviously we're on a platform that does a lot of the lifting, which is great. But there's this interaction is irreplaceably it's well it's not even it's irreplaceably human. I mean, I wouldn't want to talk to anyone's bot on a on a call just to make it look like I've got a gazillion people watching or following. That doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
It's I haven't met either of you in person, but I long for the day that we can we can raise a glass or have a cup of tea, or a real water cooler.
So,
But
Paul, what were you saying earlier when I was getting the double warp and about gratitude in
mm,
your journey?
Oh, it just brought up the connection on like how I think you and I met, and the coffee chat that we had a few years ago was about gratitude. I think it was just more of kind of like how we knew each other type of thing, but I can't remember if I shared with you kind of like the new way that I see gratitude now, but I look at it as kind of the light in a room full of darkness that shines
Mm,
brighter the darker it gets.
mm.
And I think that a lot of people, I don't want to say that it's become kind of like this buzzword, but like it
Oh, it has.
has in many instances. Like, a lot of people always talk about gratitude, this or that. And for me, I look at it as more of kind of like a lifestyle than a word type of thing, more than like a practice or anything. And I mean, it's been probably 4 or 5 years of practicing it daily. And what's so funny is I laugh about I had this conversation with my mentor, and I remember like it's been so transformational in like so many ways, but one of the biggest things was I learned in the very beginning of that journey, like my mom and I didn't have the greatest relationship, and I remember she was telling me like the number one thing that you'll get from this is it'll rewire the way that you view life and that the way that you think about things. And I remember she always told me like you would learn to see all your problems and challenges as opportunities versus like anything else. And that was just so funny how every time that comes up I think about it and I'm like, this is trying to teach me something, or it's an opportunity to, practice what I learned or whatever it is. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's a huge thing. And going back to, I found that there's a deep connection between like gratitude, presence, and the whole intuition thing. Like with everything going on with AI, I think that's probably more important more than ever. I mean, it's probably a conversation for another time, but AI's gotten very scary because it's like now you don't even know what's real anymore, because people are realizing that even though it is a machine, there's ways that you can inject kind of like humanity into it, where they're teaching it like how to respond in like this certain tone. The fact that you can like copy and paste things and put it into it has been really interesting. I've actually had a few interactions with some of my friends, and for the longest time they told me like, oh, don't panic, don't worry about it. And then the other day they sent me this like video and it looked like as real as could be. And he said, yeah, he's like, now you need to start worrying about it because that was AI. And I was just like, I think more than ever, this quiet piece is going to be important, because the only tool that you have to kind of distinguish is that intuition and a lot of that inner um, thoughts and feelings that being loud kind of inhibits.
Mm.
And that was kind of where this big connection of quiet kind of tied in, because my word theme and area of focus last year was intuition. And the daily question that I would always ask myself is like, what do you think? Because so often like people will choose to accept other people's beliefs. Or I started realizing more and more that when I was training with a lot of these mentors and you'd go to these things, and just like the way that people looked at coaching and stuff in general is really teaching people how to kind of be more like them versus teaching them to like think for themselves and embrace like who they are and find their gifts. So that
Yeah,
was kind of the, I guess, huge tie between it all.
yeah. What you said there about about the practice of of gratitude, and it's kind of commonality. You know, everyone's understands the concept. And when you're saying that, I wrote down the speed of pivoting, the
Mhm.
speed in which we go to gratitude. I know that part of the habit of being grateful helps me with this. There's still things that happen that tick me off, piss me off, make me mad, get me going. Um, but what I'm sensing or what I'm feeling or seeing is that the speed in which I can pivot to gratitude has got
Yeah.
quicker and more seamless. Um, so it's not a matter of me um stomping to gratitude because I'm still ticked and I'm writing my gratitude journal. In that there's a more of a natural switch to that. And to the Schindler's List, the music, the kind of dichotomy of music energy. um it's amazing how melancholic situations can really bring
Yeah.
up the levity or the beauty or the
Yeah.
insight.
Yeah.
And again, AI discernment is around drawing out the things. We have to now spend more of our time not using, well, let me come back a sec. We build machines to offset our labor, whether it's physical in agriculture or in
Right.
in scaling up in industry, and now we've got technological, and we've got biotechnology, biotechnology, which is also helping us with art pacemakers and artificial things that are helping us function. So we've always built things that are labor saving or energy saving devices for us as a tool. AI is shifting that. in terms of we're using it to replace some of
Yeah.
just who we are, which requires us to be more discerning. We have to take that energy and that effort to now discern what is real, what is fake, where the source was. We can't, things are obfuscated, they're occluded from us in terms of where this came from. Um, the talk, the shift between, I'm jumping around here in my thoughts, but they're all in my head.
Well, that's what happens at the water cooler.
Yes, the discernment between character and personality.
Mm, mm,
You can give AI a personality. I don't know how you can give it character,
yeah.
but we live in a world where again, if you're noisy and you're on platforms and you're behind filters, personality is the driver, not character.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and back in the day when you had to go walk into a boardroom or knock on a door to meet somebody or see them or shake their hand, you had to work on your character. All the early journey of self-development was about character building.
Hmm.
The later part of self-development is about personality types or personality focus. And AI is good on the personality stuff. It can replicate that.
Yeah.
We've got to get back to character. So,
Hey,
a lot in there.
can I share a diagram real quickly?
Yes,
Try
yes, you
this. Let's
can.
see.
Yeah, I think
When
there's a
when
share.
Paul was talking about this, and then I don't know. Oh, yeah, here it comes. When Paul was talking about it, and then you were talking about it, Steve.
Mhm.
This hit me a few years ago.
Oh, I think
That
it
this is the journey that many of us take with gratitude,
went.
right? Paul, it almost sounded like you maybe your mother was like my mother. You should be grateful, right? Or someone somewhere was telling us we needed to be grateful, and gratitude started out as an obligation.
Mm.
And then for millions of people on the planet, they only know of gratitude as a hack, right? Having a bad day, be grateful. Think of 3 things you're grateful for. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of this. I'm saying it's
Yeah.
all part of the journey. If you stick with this long enough, and I heard both of you say this, right? So it moves from obligation to hack, and then it's becoming a practice, and we're investing time, and we're developing rhythms and routines to do it more frequently. Then it becomes a habit, right? And it's just discipline and their rituals. Well, Steve, what you just said, right? How you pivot to this more quickly is
Mm.
because you've been on this long enough, and it's become mindset and lifestyle, right? It's not we've done the repetitions, we've put in the time to where now gratitude helps us filter whatever it is that comes into life,
Mm.
and peace and hope become operating systems for us. And then, right, we this is the goal that I have for all of us, right? And you two were both sharing that it becomes lifestyle,
Mm.
that it just becomes, but people think of us as a grateful person, and it's part of our DNA. So I just wanted to, when you
That's
shared
beautiful.
that, uh, I wanted to share that image, that journey, right?
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And we just kicked into December, and there's a lot of it's that time of the year where people are a lot more cognizant of again the part of that journey that you shared, the shoulds, the obligations kick in. Um, and ironically, some people fight against the habit or the hack, because I've got to be grateful now because it's Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to suffer that. Well, you just had Thanksgiving, so you've had.
I was gonna say, I mean, we just finished the month of gratitude, right? Where
Mm.
there are more posts, there are people posting about gratitude that don't post any other time of the year. Some of the things Paul was saying, it's just like, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, let's continue it. Let it be lifestyle.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
yeah. Hey, I've
absolutely.
got to jump to
Yeah.
another, but this was
That's
delightful.
Kevin made my day. Thanks. Great to see you. I hope you stay well in regards to family and enjoy the season. and we'll catch up. We're going to catch
We
up
we
soon.
will. And
Yeah.
Paul,
Yeah.
so good to see you.
Yeah, Kevin, great to see you. We'll definitely have to catch up. I know it's been a few years. Would love to learn what's new with you and what you've been up to, and would love to catch up.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Fantastic.
Thanks for
Fantastic.
hosting this time,
Take
Steve.
care.
Yes, I'm here every week. I take care, Kevin. Good to see you, buddy. Oh, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good. Yeah,
so
it's
fun.
yes. And I mean I guess that's when you take the time to draw out the relationships. You know, it's work. You some of this stuff doesn't scale
Yeah.
well, you know. I invite probably across two platforms around 1,200 people every week. They probably, I mean, some of them are just blanket, and that's fine. I don't hold anything in that. I just do it as part of
Yeah.
the exercise of getting ready for the show.
You,
Or
it's funny that you say that, Steve, because when you were saying that, like last year, one of my things, because on LinkedIn, like everybody's so used to being invited to like these events, subscribe, and all these things. I kind of just had this thought where I was like, darn, if my content and all the things that people say is like really valuable, like they don't need an invite. And what was funny was I stopped sending invites for like any of my events, unless like I kind of like compromised because some of my friends were like, no, you need to send me an invite because like if I don't get an invite, I don't see it and I
yeah,
need to put it on my calendar and all these things. But for me, it was just like it was the detachment from, you know, like the numbers, because I remember like I was having this conversation with one of my clients who's like 82,
mm,
and she had maybe like a few people on a live that we did. It was like one of the first ones, and what I was trying to get her to see was like you had like three people, but those were your ideal people. There's people who get like thousands of people,
mm,
but none of those people are going to be their client. I mean, the fact that you were speaking to the people that you needed to speak to is a win even of itself. You know, everybody just has this idea of, oh, I'm going to do this and people are going to come. And it's like, I
mm,
learned the hard way that it takes it's not just build it and people will show up. Like um, you have to kind of build not a community, but you have to build a, like a consistency
yep,
type of thing.
yep,
You know, it takes time. And that was the one thing, like when I would work with people, I was like, I know this is going to work, but I cannot tell you how long it's going to work because I don't know, like, you know, what you're going to do, like your duration. Like, are you going to reach out to people outside of the platform?
mm,
Like, are you going to go to events? You know, there's so many like
yeah,
moving parts. And I would always tell to people, like, that's the only thing that I cannot answer, like, is
yeah.
how long it's going to take, because it's so different from everyone. Like Steve, I'm sure you've had this experience too of
Oh
like
yes.
you put out one post and somebody you've never met before, but like the one thing, and they're like, oh man, like yes, like Steve, like, you know, we need to work together, we need to have a conversation,
Mm,
collaboration. Like you just you just don't know
mm,
on like you when your message like hits the right person. And I
yeah.
think that was one of the things that I didn't like about the audio events. Was for a lot of people it was about vanity, or it was like a it was almost kind of like a they wanted to like hear themselves talk type of thing. I
Hmm.
would go so many events where it's just like a monologue for an hour, and I'd be like, and what's funny is people would always make fun of me because when I would do it, I would specifically like if I was doing an event for like an hour, I'd maybe talk for like 10 to 15 minutes. And what's so
Hmm.
funny is like other people would come up, and that was always my biggest takeaway from the event. And I was just like, I would always tell people like, I know what I know, right? And it's like odds are it's probably the same, as very similar to, and I had different like takes and perspectives and things like that, but I'm just like, this is where you start building like relationships and where connection happens, because it's like that's what made a lot of people want to come, was that they knew that the whole point, if it wasn't for the audience, like I wouldn't have a show, I wouldn't have an event. So I
Hmm.
always kind of honored that. And I still think that that's what makes a live so powerful, is the fact that you can have other people like interact and um have them join the conversation, and you're talking about one thing that triggers something for somebody else, and then you have a connection point, and maybe like you have no idea who that person is. Next thing you
Hmm.
know, it's like you're collaborating with them, they're a client. And i I just think a lot of that comes down to listening and I guess like seeking to understand versus like respond a lot
Yeah.
of times. And that's why like a lot of times if you or somebody else is talking, Steve, like you'll see me like my mic's like muted because I
Hmm.
look at like the mute button as my best friend. And I remember when I was doing Impossible Equals Impossible, like I would be live with people, and when they would talk I would mute, and there were times where like I'd be talking and then they'd be like, wait, did you say something? And then I'd be like, oh shoot. And I reminded them that like the reason why I did that was, one, like for me personally, like interrupting is kind of just like one of the things that it's kind of like a pet peeve. But because I've been around like a lot of people who are older, I had to like kind of see it from their perspective, that they're not like interrupting to be rude. It's just that
Hmm.
if they don't say it, they'll forget. So that was
Right.
kind of like a different perspective shift for me. But I also just realized through speaking on shows, and also just like having being a host, that so many times like there's a lot of like powerful like magical thoughts and things that could come out that get dimmed because of the interruption.
Yeah.
And oftentimes like when you let people finish their thought and then you can like revisit it, it just amplifies the conversation. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm, I guess I'm of an age or disposition where sometimes things that people say, that's why I always have something to write. I always have a something to write with, and if I'm looking down, it's usually because I'm making a note. There's something in that discussion that really resonated, and I don't want to lose it, and I don't want to interrupt. So it's getting that balance. So oh, we got Mr. Wise in the house.
What's going on?
I do. Good to see you, bro. Good to see you. You're looking very trim there in your black t-shirt. You've been working out.
I wish. I need to. No, I've just been a little bit under the last.
Bit under the you're breaking up with the weather. You said.
Yeah, I'm and all that. So
Oh, oh, okay, okay. Yeah, it's a little bit choppy, but it's great to see you. Great to see you, bro. Yeah, we're just talking about Paul was just sharing about how it's important to kind of hear. Um, well, we're all in that space where we do shows and we have guests. And um, I know that for me, the proportion as the host, I can't speak more than the guest. I should not speak more than the guest because that doesn't serve the audience or the guest, because I'm there every week or every time and they're not. So I definitely give them the space and the oxygen to share what they want to share, and also just tease that out of them, which is cool. This environment, the water cooler, I talk a bit more. I guess I feel like I always talk a bit more, but it's a space where it's just I'm with my buds, man. I'm with my peeps, and if people can eavesdrop on sort of I don't guess the other side of the curtain, or just um eh,
yeah,
hear free
it's
expression, So
always more. It's
oh,
right.
Will, you're gonna have to get you're gonna need a stronger connection, bro.
I'll be back.
All right, yeah. not do, he's not doing himself justice as a top media as a top media guy. So, but what you said something that I wrote down. You talked about people, having you can tell people that what they're doing would work, but you don't know when it will work for them because of the capacity. And I put down the capacity to endure. So I know I've learned that not the hard not the hard way. I've learned it regardless. Is that you you we often underestimate, and I've used this before, overestimating a year and underestimating a decade, which speaks to not really knowing. We can get it so wrong in terms of when we expect something to come back and reward us. And I found it very, very poignant in sort of my music journey, playing an instrument and now playing in a band, which I would have liked to do it the one day versus day one type thing, right? Um, and that was a 1 day thing, and then I guess day one started when I sort of went to an open mic and played the cajon, and then day two was actually someone offering to sell me their secondhand cajon as they upgraded, and I bought their one, and then took me under their wing and mentored me a little bit and just started that journey. So, you know, the 1 day became the day one, and you've fast forward. It's not even fast forward implies that it's going to happen quickly. I'm not saying it happens quickly. I'm just saying that you move now from then to now, and you're in a different place, and you're surprised, oftenly pleasantly surprised, where you've got to, because you've created the capacity to endure. If someone said to me, you start playing the cajon, and 6 weeks later you'll be doing this, that's not necessarily true. We see that in so many offers whereby, just do this for X weeks and you'll get the result. And it actually diminishes our capacity to endure because often those things take a lot longer than it says on the tin. And if you're not ready for it, then you could be just missing it, because
Yeah.
you know if it says 6 weeks, but if you just waited 6 months, you'd be surprised. But that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it too is the whole like the instant gratification of it all, right? Because it's like because of like the phones and computers, like we essentially like have the entire world at our fingertips. And I remember like I was everybody always asks, like what's the secret and all these things. And I remember I was asked this question one time, and I was just like, well, I mean, if you ask me like the one thing, I would say it's probably delayed gratification, because it's like everything is about instant gratification. And I think, Steve, you and I were having this conversation about how one of the things that I had kind of like a hard time with, I wouldn't say, and now it's kind of like in the middle, but when I first started, I really didn't like TikTok, just like the type of content, the way that it was like kind of the nature of the platform. And then I kind of had to like retrain or rewire, the way that I looked at it, and flip the perspective on how like I was so used to doing like long form stuff, like speaking on podcasts, long form content, like writing articles, like all these things. And I remember I was still training with my mentor at the time, and she had said like, if you can't land the plane in 2 minutes or less, like you're probably not clear enough. And that was kind of the big lesson that I took from TikTok. Was it taught me a lot about being clear and getting to the point, like doing videos in like a minute. And what's so funny is, and we had kind of talked about this a little bit. I can't remember if it was the last episode or the week before, but for a couple years I had auditioned for a speaking competition, and they gave you like 1 minute. And I had talked about how like when I first started, I was like, oh my gosh, like 1 minute, there's like not much time. And then when I ended up doing it, both times I ended up going under a minute. And it's just like, I think a lot of it too on why it's so unpredictable on like how long it takes people is the urgency is like a huge game changer. Like if you need something to get done, and I'm sure like for you, Steve, or anybody like watching, you go back to a point in your life where it's like, I need to get this done in like a day or 2 days, and you're like, there's no way. And the next thing you know, you do it. That kind of goes back to the whole idea of impossible equals impossible. It's just like, it's not saying that because somebody can do it that you can or you should do it, but it's just like showing you what's possible, and how like a lot of times the people tend to underestimate their potential and they put like a ceiling when there really isn't one. And what's interesting is earlier when Kevin was on, he was talking a lot about like, you know, the human aspect and the human condition. And I'm a big like superhero person. Like I love Marvel and DC, but like my favorite superhero like all time is Batman.
Wow.
And what's funny is everybody like is like, oh, but he's not really like a superhero because he's a human. But like when you look at the comics, he shows you that because he's like a genius and he's so intelligent, he's able to outsmart and outwit like all these people who have powers. And there's been numerous movies of like Greek gods and mythology and all these things where they talk about like, you know, the fact that you're a human, it makes you kind of like greater than
Yeah.
a god because you have, you know, that's like your distinguishing edge. And I don't know, like I was the thought that kind of really came up as I was listening from the beginning to this point is that one of the reasons why a lot of people go wrong is they want growth and like this evolution, but we've become so addicted to convenience and comfort. And I think that those you it's kind of like an oxymoron. Like you're
Yeah.
not gonna have growth and evolution in convenience and comfort. And that's why I think a lot of people are stuck because despite what you see on social media, like growth is like extremely uncomfortable. Like everybody wants to do personal development and do all these things until you have to like sit down and ask yourselves those questions. I mean, that's kind of where the whole idea of you can't hurt me came from, because it's like I've had those conversations with myself. Like there's not really anything you can say to me more that hurts than like the
What you say to
internal.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like I think that's what a lot of it is. And I mean, I know even for me personally, like it it's been like mentally challenging, and I'm still kind of like navigating, you know, how I want to navigate social media and all that type of stuff, because it's
Mm.
like everybody tells you all these things. And but when you learn a lot about, you know, these people that you just see on social media, and you learn the behind the scenes and like how people get there, and you know all the things that people talk about and they glamorize, when you learn how it all happens, like it just changes things. And
Mm.
I know this is something that you and I've kind of talked about, is just like for me, like I look at how I get to where I want to go being more important than just getting there, you know,
Yeah.
because a lot of these people will get there. And I saw this a lot in the professional training and coaching space of like you would see people who would like, you know, pay tens of thousands of dollars, do all these things, and they're basically just a clone of, you know, what they took. And then they're wondering like why a lot of it doesn't work. And I'm just like, because people aren't built that way, you know.
Yeah.
And now more than ever, because of AI, people are seeing through the charade of social media, and a lot more stuff are going to be questioned that probably would have slid 1 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That I think that being real and incorporating like who you are and that human, just connecting with people on a human level is what's going to win, because that's your nobody connects exactly like another person,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's what I think. Like people just need to leverage, be an outlier, right?
Yes.
Distinguish the things that make them unique, and kind of lean in versus trying to run away or hide from it.
Yeah. There's that. Uh, what you mentioned there about the deferred delayed gratification, and we're in an environment where we want things quickly, instantly. We create urgency because I guess urgency is the way. A bit of neuroscience. It's the way to hijack the amygdala. It's the way to get you into that fear center. There's the fear of the fear of, we got FOMO, and fear of missing out, or that the lifetime opportunity, the once in a lifetime opportunity, is going to pass us by. And we tie into urgency, and in our makeup, urgency does a lot of things happen because of urgency. I'm a brinksman. Unfortunately, I don't like always being a brinksman in terms of having 3 weeks to do something and then doing it the night before. It's not healthy. I get it done, and I sort of pat myself on the back for getting through it. But I know that the toll, the toll that it takes to get something done on at the last minute, um, is not it's not always a good payoff. There's a consequence to that brinksmanship type of mentality. And I think so. Social media also makes it feel, or makes it look like everybody else is getting there quicker than you are. Therefore, if something says you can, why wait 90 days? You can have it in 90 minutes. Then you think, well, if someone said that it's possible, then it's possible for me. But you don't know the circumstance under which they can do it in 90 minutes and it takes you 90 days. And you don't know how long your 90-day transformation is going to stay versus being transformed in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Kevin just gave us a great insight in terms of the sort of the framework of gratitude. And from one end, where you're told to be grateful. We grow up in societies, in communities that say be grateful, tell them thank you and please, and the P's and Q's, so that you grow up with. To the other side, where it becomes a lifestyle, it's like someone goes, boy, you're really, I Kevin just jumped on the call and we both gravitated to gratitude. You see Kevin's face and you think gratitude, and you think, well, was that a 90-day journey for him? Was that a 9-year journey for him? It certainly wasn't a 90-minute journey, So, life's, having something in your DNA takes the time it takes, and we have to be grateful for it sticking, and we have to be thankful for the whenever it comes our way, and it lands, And again, that's character versus personality. Personality says you can become an awesome speaker in 2 weeks, from being shy and timid to an awesome speaker on stage, TED Talk, 2 weeks. Is it possible? I'm sure someone's done it. If you have enough feeds that you listen to or watch, you'll find somebody who's done it. Is that your path? Only you can answer that, and you've got to be okay. You have to build the capacity to endure. And if you don't build that capacity to endure, then you'll fall short, because you'll just finish. Your endurance will finish before you'll expire your capacity before you get to the goal. And I know my journey is really just, you got to stay in the game.
Yeah.
you know
And I think, like, to your point, you've brought up this word like endure a lot. Like, I think when I think about delayed gratification, like, that's the word that comes to my mind. Like, if I had to sum that up and simplify it, is it's just about like enduring and hanging in there. Because I mean, like, with where LinkedIn is right now, like, case in point, you have so many people who are trying to teach you things, and, like, yes, they're at this level, but, like, the things that they did to get them there, like, you may not have access to. Like, right now, like, people don't have audio events anymore, and that was like a huge way on like how I built my following and my network. But, like, what what's transferable is a lot of the human components. Like, I always tell people, like, LinkedIn's about like having powerful conversations and building meaningful relationships. I think that's really what social media comes down to more than ever. And when it comes to content, that's how I kind of looked at it for myself. And when I would explain it to my clients, I was like, it's really, if you think about it, it's nothing more than either a guide or a conversation. You're creating this piece of video, photo, written work, whatever it is, because you're trying to either start a conversation or you're trying to be a guide and like show people like how to do stuff. And it goes back to this idea that I talk about very often, is that there's always going to be someone who's ahead and behind of you. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter like where you are in the world, your gender, like there's always going to be somebody who is ahead and behind. And we focus so much on like going up, 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 up. But like what I've learned is that everybody wants to be around, these like high net worth, high profile people, like be in those circles. The way that you get there is through reaching back to teach and like being an asset and helping other people. It's not just like reaching up to grow, paying the money and all these things. And I remember like, I can't remember if I shared this story with you, but I remember thinking to myself like why I was in a lot of those circles, because going back to this hoodie and talk about like an outlier. There, I was the only one in my generation. It was mostly like women. I would go to events of like hundreds of people, and there was maybe less than like a handful of men, and the other ones that were there were probably like 2 to 3 times my age. And I remember like my mentor told me, she's like, money may get you into the room, but your character and your work ethic will keep you here. And I've seen her turn away like people who have offered to pay her crazy amounts of money, and she's just like, no, I'm not for sale like in that way. I have standards and things. And that was really kind of eye-opening, because I mean, before I became an entrepreneur, like most of my time in the professional world was in the finance space, and there it's just kind of like money kind of trumps everything. The rules are very different for people who have like a ton of money and not. I have so many stories of like managers and people wanting me to like basically break federal laws for like some of the top clients. I mean, it's crazy, but that's when I think a lot of it really changes, is when you're able to look at it from that lens and have kind of a foundation, of like who you are type of thing, and what you stand for. And going back to this idea of impossible equals impossible, it became really important for me. And there won't be anybody that's been impacted by that show probably more than me. And I watch like every episode. I take like pages of notes, and I just remember thinking like, when I have like moments that don't work out, or I get in those times where I'm like, darn, things are like not that great, it kind of goes back to that lifestyle, right, of impossible equals impossible, and realizing, hey, you've done this before, you can do it again. And it's almost like having evidence to disprove like all the nonsense that goes on in your head. And if you don't have that evidence, like maybe it's your first time going through it, you can lean into other people's like belief and experiences, and use them as kind of like a guide, if you will, right? So I think that's really the way that I see a lot of things, is that as important as it is to get people to like, to be a guide and like share lessons and stuff with people, I think what's really not talked about enough is getting people to think for themselves. And that's where the whole like, oh, I'm curious, why do you think that way, all that stuff comes in. Because a lot of times people get upset and they're mad about all these things, and it's like deep down that person doesn't feel that way. They don't even know why they feel that way. And a lot of things can just be alleviated with like a question. And I think that's why communication is probably like one of the most important skills. Is And it's such a deep topic. Like everybody thinks it's just like speaking and listening, but there's so much that goes into the art of communication. And there's a book Hi, I think it's called like the Seven Frequencies of Communication by
Okay.
Erwin Raphael McManus. That's one of my next reads that I'm excited to read,
All
and
right.
yeah.
There's a book that I'm just going to bring up I'm going to get the title up here that that is really been doing doing my head in a little bit. um, I like books that do my head in. That I tend to consume audio books because not so well. I'm sometimes doing other things, but I like the audio. I speak more than well, I write and I read and I speak and I listen. You know, obviously we do those things, but for me, I like the audio, especially if it's well read or read by the author, and those two things really do make it stand out for me. Let me just bring it up here. It's Yuval Noah Harari's book, The 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, and it is been a it's been a real eye opener, and he talks about the uh, things that we things that we need to learn, or things that we ought to be thinking about. I'll do it this way, um, in terms of preparing ourselves for lessons of the 21st century. He talks about schools, and he talks about the four C's. You mentioned, the importance of communication. He mentioned the four C's that we should learn, which is critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And interestingly enough, those are things that can make us irreplaceably human, to Kevin's point. Those are the things that require a concerted effort. If we've given up our labor to labor saving devices, we've given up some of our memory to technological devices. My smartphone makes me dumb. Um, and I mean, I grew up with an address book in the corner of the room, and the most important numbers memorized in your head. And now I don't even know my own number. you know, you know? So that's how dumb I've got. But so and if we give up we're giving up our memory to devices, and if we give up our thinking to learning models, LLMs, then I don't know what's left after that. I guess what's left after that is character. Really, it's who we essentially are. Um, but we have to be thoughtful about that. And if we give up our thinking, then the whole term "I think, therefore I am," that famous quote, sort of goes by the way. If Claude is thinking, then who am I? If ChatGPT is thinking, then who am I? um, and especially if it thinks as a proxy for you to somebody else, rather than me talking to you right now, Paul. I have my bot talk to you now. That's me by proxy, but that's not really me anymore. So what am I doing while my bot is talking to you? uh,
Yeah. You know what's scary about that thought though, Steve? Because like when when I came out with that whole saying of like Chat GPT couldn't duplicate me if it tried, I had a thought process one time of like, let me like basically let AI try to be me for a week. But the reason why I didn't do it is because I was afraid that it would actually work. And I honestly like now that I think about it, just because I know a lot more about like what AI is capable of than I knew, like 2 or 3 years ago, the going back to this whole like human thing, right? Like people always tend to underestimate the capability and the power of human beings. Like, and this isn't to make it political, but like if you look at every aspect of like with the gun whole thing, people are always blaming guns instead of the people that like shoot the gun.
mm,
Or it's like, they're quick to blame the thing versus like the people who are like the reason like why the thing is like happening.
yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of like the same thing with AI. Like people are realizing that the one thing that AI can't really do is have like a sense of humanity and human connection. So what are they doing? They're injecting it into AI, and I think that that's why video is going to be so powerful. Is even because, for example, right, like if you and I are like talking, you can kind of tell that it's me based off of like, you're seeing my hand moving, you're not seeing
Mhm.
like any weird things happening in the
Yeah.
background. But if we were just texting, like it'd be really interesting to see if like people could tell if it was me or a bot, because for the longest time I always told people, like, anytime that you send me a message, a connection request, anything that I write back, that I comment, like, it was always me. Like, I never had a virtual assistant. I never did
Mhm.
anything. Like, that was the one thing that no matter what happened, like, I would not outsource that.
Mhm.
Because to me, that was like, that was kind of like the most valuable thing, because it was that sense of like me, the fact
Yeah.
that so many people are willing to outsource that and give it away
Mhm.
to other people just kind of goes to show, I mean, not just like how people kind of value themselves, but like
Yeah.
the fact that they really don't think that their uniqueness is the greatest asset, and
Yes.
how invaluable that is.
Mm.
And I always tell people, like, I love having polarizing conversations where like I feel somebody feels one way, and then I'll come in and then I'll like flip the whole room on the head, and then people
Yeah.
are like, "Oh, I never looked at it that way." Or it's even for me, like I'm pretty set on kind of like, I think this way, and then somebody will give it to me in a new perspective, and I'm just like, "Oh wow, I never thought about that before. Thank you
Mhm.
for sharing that. That was so insightful." Because that's what makes this whole like vehicle of communication. That's what I look at social media as. It's nothing more than a vehicle of connection and communication. That's what makes it so powerful, is when you allow it to actually do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And
But you have
yeah.
to but you have to inject well, I say and alongside that you have
Yeah.
to inject critical thinking.
Oh, for
You
sure. Yeah.
can't have these things. And I love what you said about the personal about we're undermining our personal value.
Mm.
It's actually it feels like a again pointing to my age. I mean, I've been around technology when we used to have a soldering iron to change memory chips, right? So that's dating myself. The um, the Z, what's it? The Motorola 7400 series. So long time. I've started in technology in the mid 80s. So that's a lot of transformation in a particular industry, just one vertical, let alone sort of the world's perspective on things. And it feels like we are moving to a race to the bottom, because it's one thing having economies of scale um, with regards to labor saving devices, but when those devices are now in us and actually, sort of taking our place, then it does become a race to the bottom with regards to outsourcing our personal value. You you can't. i- i- we shouldn't put that sort of price. Oh, you might cut out. That's fine. We can't put that kind of price on what we're doing, because um, we end up we basically just end up sort of offsetting ourselves. And with regards to trying to scale and have a bot run things on your behalf versus actually taking the time to the discernment and the time to connect with somebody, to make that interaction, to make it personal, um, to put off the economies of scale costs around doing lots of things and doing it at less value. And when that demeaning, when that lower value is part of who you are, your nature, your personality, your character, then I don't want to shortchange that. Um, I don't think that's worth the effort. Um, High priced, highly valuable items in society in the world are priced that way usually because of their rarity, and they're not. It's not mass marketed. Um, they're more sort of price inelastic. They don't change their price with the changing tides. They hold their value, and I think people ought to be in a place where they can hold their value and not have it undermined through advancing technology. And don't think that you can. I wouldn't want to clone myself. I wouldn't want to say, "Oh, I wish I was two of me, so I can do twice as much." Um, I'd just get half the value. I'd probably get less than half the value if there was if there was two of me. So it doesn't make any sense. But I think Paul's got a technical issue there. But anyway, this book, Harari's book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, is quite dystopian, I thought. It made me think a lot of things. Again, having seen in the 21st century, I was alive for the millennium, the change of the century, the change of the millennium. Um, thinking through now, people born now will be in their 30s. Well, they'll be in their 2050. They'll be in their mid 30s, or sorry, it's 2025 now. If you were born today, you'd be you probably be alive for the 22nd century, which sounds so far-fetched, but there are things that we are doing now. There's things that we're setting into motion that are going to make the 22nd century a very interesting time for the world. A lot of the global aspects to the book, in terms of we are much more interconnected and much more interdependent than we can ever imagine. Um, I, the Jamaica weather effect, or the Caribbean hurricane, climate change, rising levels, water levels, lots of things like that are really going to be going to play a lot into just the dynamics of the world. Um, and it seems like we're not doing anything about it. But that's my sort of political soapbox, really. Um, with all the smarts that we have, I'm not sure. I don't hear much about it. Let's put it that way. I'm sure people are using enough AI cycles to try and troubleshoot major global issues, but we don't tend to hear about it. We tend to hear about AI used for making us look better, or making movies, or getting us connected, or cloning ourselves to be in different places at different times. But we'll see. But Paul, if you're there, we're at the 1 hour 12 mark, so I probably want to close out shortly. I, oh, he's dropped off, but yeah, but it's been great. I really enjoyed it today. Paul, thank you for your input and joining us. I want to give a shout out to Carla Hooker, who's one of our regular contributors. Be well, and we look forward to seeing you next week. It's great to connect with you on Facebook real quick before we jumped on here. And look after yourself. And also Sandra, Alexandra, getting a shout out through Kevin there. I'm going to check out your post on LinkedIn right now, and we will catch up again in the next one. Next week, I'll be here at the same time, 4:30 UK time. That's 11:30 Eastern. And this has been a water cooler. Come and join us. Reach out to me on a DM, or direct connect through some source, and we'll get a chat. All right. Thanks very much for joining us this week, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.